So today we are going to start with the topic business research problems. How to formulate research problems. Firstly, let's see what is research. Research is the means by which we seek to discover the truth. It is a scientific and systematic search for information on a specific topic. In fact, research is an art of scientific investigation. Redman and Moray defined the research as systematic effort to gain knowledge. We can also say it an academic activity as such the term used in technical sense. According to Kilford Woody, research components uh, is comprised of defining and evaluating data, making deduction and reading conclusion. See, students, research is very important. The success of research effort lies in choosing the correct problem. We have to actually go with the correct problem which we can further analyze it and we can come to any conclusion. So it is essential that a researcher identifies a problem that demand an answer, a need that requires a solution, a demand that requires a satisfaction. So the research problem itself lies at the core of research process. Let's see what is research problem. A research problem is a statement about an area of concern, a condition to be improved, a difficulty to be eliminated, or a troubling question that exists in a scholarly literature, in theory, or in practice that points to the need for meaningful understanding and deliberate investigation. So, the problem identification itself lies in the process of research. In case of any exploratory study, the objective of such study is to find the problem for further research. Hence, it does not start with problem identification. However, for any other kind of research, selection of its problem is very vital aspect of research process. The world around has lots of problems. For example, in the social field, we face the problem regarding crime, poverty, housing, any government scheme, any problem with bureaucratic delays, any complexities, business, any problem regarding work culture of a business or technical deficiencies. So it is not difficult to find the problem area. The difficulty lies in choosing a problem area where specific problem can be clearly defined and yet the problem is not a frequently researched one. So basically in this particular topic, we will discuss how to formulate a research problem. In some social science disciplines, the research problem is typically posed in form of questions. A research problem does not state how to do something, offer a vague or broad proposition, or present a value question. So researcher has to being very attentive while choosing a problem. He should keep in mind certain criteria that should be very helpful to finalize a good research. The purpose of problem statement is to introduce the reader to the importance of topic being studied. The reader is oriented to significance of the study and the research questions or hypothesis to follow. See, even newspaper give very sort of information regarding research. So it is always like what reader wants to study. These the newspaper provides the particular reader. So it is basically research problem places a problem into a particular context that defines the parameter of what is to be investigated, provides a framework for reporting the results and indicates what is probably necessary to conduct the study and explain how the findings will present this information. So you have to give your focus regarding significance of your studies. What is your research problem? What you are going to study? How you are going to formulate that particular problem? So research problem is very important and research problem itself lies with the research process to provide a good basic solution to the problem. There are some criteria of good research problem. Researcher, while choosing a problem, they may keep in mind certain criteria that would help them in finalizing a good problem. There are two main factors in selection of topic, external and personal. The external criteria involves how the topic is important for the field, availability of both data and the data collection methods. See, we have two types of data. We do have two types of data. One is secondary, other one is primary. Primary data is that data in which we actually go to the field and collect information. And secondary data is that data which is already provided by many government agencies. You can collect the data from any annual report of the company, or you can collect the data from any good institutions that consist of secondary data. Basically, primary data is that data in which respondent himself or herself go to the field to investigate the particular problem and collect the data as per the requirement. And secondary data is that data which is already available in the market. The primary data is also known as time cross-sectional data, and the secondary data is of two types, that is panel data and time series data. Panel data specifically focus on the data with number of years and the other components, and the time series data only focus on number of years. So for the both data, the data collection methods and the administration is cooperative or not, it has to be seen. Personal criteria means research own interest, time, and cost. Criteria for selection of research problems depend upon the following characteristics. So one has to see the external factors as well as the personal factors. External factor is that whether the researcher is want to go for to field or not, whether data is available or not, data collection methods are there or not for the to carry the particular research, to conduct the research. And the personal problem must be there. Researcher own interest has to be there. He has to put own time and own cost to pursue with the research. So let's see the first characteristic. The first one is personal inclination. The chief motivation in the way of selecting research problem is the personal inclination of the research. If the researcher is very inclined, very keen to know the problem very well, very keen to find out the solution of the research, that means he or she have personal inclination towards the particular research problem. So if a researcher has personal interest in the topic, he would select that problem for his research work. The second one is resources availability. During the selection, a researcher will see to the resources available. If there is like resources like money, time, accommodation, and transport must be available to the selection place. Then the selection of problem is very easy. See, before COVID, it was like we have to go to the market, we have to pursue with the research. So it is always like there must be have some time, we must have some accommodation to live, transportation facility must be properly available to us. But during due to this COVID-19, these sort of problems become a little bit solved. Like we have to create Google form and we have to send it towards our respondent so that we get some response. But with this Google form, there is also availability of some pros and cons. Like we have to convince the respondent to please uh, to answer our particular questions. The next is relative importance. The importance and the problem also play a vital role in selection of research problem. If the problem is relatively important, then the researcher tend towards the selection of one. Problem must be important. It must be during the scenario of today's circumstances. Like if you want to study the problem, something related with COVID-19, you have to study it today. For example, you want to see whether the vaccination of COVID-19, whether the doses of vaccination of COVID-19 is literally beneficial for the population or not. Then that means you are conducting one of the survey that is currently regarding with the problem of COVID-19. Like you want to see the impact of COVID-19 on middleman income, middle businessman. You want to see the impact of COVID-19 on students. That means you are currently pursuing with the today's topic. What today's topics are there, today's problems are there. Next is researcher knowledge. The researcher knowledge should play a vital role in selection of research problem. The wisdom and experience of investigator is required for well collection of the research data. He can bitterly select their problem. So one has to put his knowledge to further go with the research problem. To select that particular problem, he has to investigate very thoroughly. Well, collection of data must be there. So research and knowledge play a vital role in selection of research problem. Practicality is also responsible for selection. The practical usefulness of the problem is the main motivation for the researcher to intended timelines of the problem. Some problems take little time for its solution, while others take more time. So it's entirely depend upon the time in which we have to complete the research work. Data availability, if the desired data is available to the researcher, the problem would be selected. There must be certain problems that would be clearly available to the researcher. So one has to be focused regarding originality of the research, the clarity, interest, the important and applicability of the research, feasibility with the researcher abilities, and cost and time available to the research. Urgency is a pinpoint the way of selection of research problem. Urgent problem must be given priority because the immediate solution can benefit the people. Feasibility is also an important factor for the selection of research problem. The researcher qualification, training, experience should match the problem. The next one is area culture. The culture of area for which a researcher conducts research is also responsible for the selection of research problem. So all these are the criteria in which researcher has to lie to find out the good research problem. The next is characteristic of a research problem. Any research is a difficult task to achieve, and researcher needs to do a great effort. Selection of research topic is the initial step to success. Research topic must be very clear and easy to understand. It should not distract people. If the topic is well defined, it is the only way to success the research. The topic should not create doubt and double impression. Easy language is the key to success. Use of the technical words if necessary, otherwise focus on simplicity. Research titles should be according to the rules of titling. There are different rules of titling. A researcher aware must aware about before writing a research title. While selecting a research topic, current importance of researcher should not be considered, should also be considered. Topic should not be obsolete and it should have greater importance in the current day. We can also say that research must be smart. That should be considered while we are going to pursue with the research. Whether it is qualitative research or quantitative research, it should be smart. Smart here implies with specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. Specific is like the research should concentrate on that problem which is specifically stated. It should not go in very deep, the problem should be specifically mentioned. Measurable, the research problem should be quantifiable or observable. This may include interviews, survey, or recorded, otherwise such as recorded observations such as videos and audio recording. The problem should be like this, that must be measurable. So the instruments that will the help of researcher gather the data from the respondent. The next is attainable. A research problem should be easily achieved, solved, or answered by the researcher after the valid procedure that has been carried out. Realistic, it should be possible for the researcher to perform the experiments or observation needed to solve their problem and time bound. Research should also consider Researchers should also consider the time allotment for their research. They should think of research problem that should be carried out in a given period time. The next is sources of research problem. See, we have to see one of the initial tasks is to look for the unsolved questions. There are a lot of potential in many problem areas that require the immediate attention of the researcher. So a researcher may find a potential research problem through any of these sources. The first source is theory deduction. Theory deduction Theories are ideas about how things relate to each other. Theories may be general, commonly held beliefs such as cats had caused decline birds population in New York, or more technical ideas like global warming causes a decline of certain spices in the ocean. Theories may be useful, suggesting interesting questions and generally guiding the field work, but should not restrict us from exploring alternative explanation. Funding agencies. Some of the organizations, such as universities and non-government organizations, people provide funds to the researcher to do the research on certain research problems. For example, the university may provide funding to researcher to perform the research on effects of climate change and tourism. Next is past research and literature review. A body of knowledge should be developed on the sound foundation of research finding. Usually at the end of research, further research problems are suggested basing on the shortcoming of previous research which can be investigated. So one has to see the research gap. It is very good source to look for the research problem. Literature review. Many studies have a special section detailing the possibilities of further research. Thus, it is very important to researcher go through with the literature review with the area of interest. The next is personal experience. Day-to-day personal experience of the research may serve as a good source of ideas to formulate a research problem. For example, a researcher may have experienced a violence from his or her alcoholic father or try to investigate the relationship between alcohol consumption and violence. So there may be many life experience that the researcher may want to develop a research problem. The next one is practical experience. Research problem may be formulated from challenges and sorry problems experienced during day-to-day work. For example, doctors and nurses may get research problem idea from their clinical experience. So we can say these sources from open numerous potential possibilities of research. However, not every problem qualities for research, and the selection of the problem is very careful and well thought out process. The next topic is identification of the problem. See, we have to identify with problem with these basic ideas. And company, while dealing with the marketing dynamics, encounter numerous problems that cannot be identified clearly. Hence, it is imperative that the researcher understand the context of problem and manages to successfully identify the problem. The task of identification of the problem involves the comprehensive discussion and analysis of associated contents. So the variables that is shown here like discussion with management, expert review, literature review, environment analysis, is there to identify the problem. Let's see the first one. The first is discussion with management. The starting point for identifying the research problem is the management itself. A discussion with the management will help to understand the nature and kind of decision that the managers have to make. This will help the researcher to understand the kind of information that the management is expecting from the research results. Basically, while interacting with the manager, the researcher moves from understanding the management problem so that he is able to define the research problem. A management can provide valuable input to the researcher even. The next is expert review. The next variable depend upon the problem identification stage where you can go and seek the help of the expert who can clearly explain you the number of things like they have multiple knowledge, they have considerable experience and knowledge from about the marketing dynamics of concerned industry. The main method for extracting information from the expert is an unstructured personal interview where the researcher goes there and can ask number of questions. The next is literature review. The researcher at this stage may review all the available conceptual literature concerning the theories and concepts related to the problem, as well as empirical literature comprising of studies done earlier and bearing similarity of the problem under study. It is also possible for researcher to get in touch with people who have authored books or conducted research relevant to his area of study. So basically, literature review helps the researcher in two ways. Firstly, to find the research gap, and secondly, to assess the expert knowledge. They provide the full database to the researcher also. The next is environment analysis. This allows the researcher to understand the background of client firms as well as industry in which the researcher is operating. The competitive position of the firm in the industry becomes clear after reviewing the experimental environmental variables. The researcher often reviews the previous trend forecast data available, compares the current situation in the light of such data. The researcher also reviews various microeconomic variables like political, economical, and legal environment so that he can see which factor affects the firm. So these are the main four variables that one can put to identify the problem. The next topic is steps in identifying the research problems. Defining the problem and research objective is often the hardest step in the research process. The manager must be able to identify the problem, may even though he may not know the specific causes. For example, a manager of a retail mall felt that there is decrease in sales, but he was not able to recognize what is the main problem. So, after spending money and after conducting the research, the fact was brought to mention that there was a problem of poor floor layout and more with the product positioning. So careful problem definition would have avoided the cost and delay of research and would have suggested research on the real problem. So it involves the steps like number one is outline the area of interest. Second is choose a topic. The next is narrow your topic. The other one is identify a research problem. And the last one is identify the purpose of study. So, a researcher should conduct a situational analysis of the problem. The background of the study, underlying theoretical and conceptual basis, should be clearly understood. The researcher should make a critical examination of the marketplace and look into related studies. This step is very exhaustive as it involves a detailed discussion with the key decision maker. So, it is very difficult to choose the area of interest. And the next step is like choose a topic. It would help to define the limit of a study. The unit of analysis could be a product, a social structure like a market or a company. To study service satisfaction for the telecom company, the researcher may use students, businessmen, or laborers as the unit of analysis. The next one is researcher should now determine the essential and the relevant problems. It has to define their topic. It has to identify the topic in which they want to pursue with their research. The variable that is predicted or explained is called as dependent variable, and the variable that influences the dependent variable is called independent variable. The next step is identify the research problem. The researcher must specify the relationship in which this opinion exists between the variables. Depending on the purpose of the study, the researcher has to decide which relationship would form a part of a study and which are to be ignored. And the last step is he has to identify the purpose for your study. You have to develop a hypothesis. Once the problems to be tackled has been finalized, the variables identified, the relationship stated, the researcher should now formulate a tentative solution to the problems. These proposed solutions are called as hypotheses, which the researcher would proceed to formulate on the basis of fact known as collected by him. Whether these relationships are scientifically maintainable or not will be decided after research collects and analyzes data. In case of studies which are not hypothesis testing, researcher may frame a set of research objectives. So, the steps from the selection of the problem to defining the problem and stating the hypothesis are fraught with various pitfalls. Researchers should take care of the problem chosen is not an excuse for the personal entitlement of the researcher. That is not being used to enhance the knowledge of the researcher alone. While defining, he should take care that it is not too narrow or not too broad in its scope and matches with the experience and qualification of the resources. So it is being the topic. Thank you.